everybody. Welcome to the very first recorded podcast, episode number 1 of Stories of Strength. Just for anybody tuning in, obviously it's the first time you're tuning in. I came up with this idea. It was my brainchild. I really wanted to create an inspirational video, something that would inspire a lot of people. And then one of my really good friends said, why don't you do a podcast? So therein started the dream of having a podcast. And another friend helped me come up with a cool name. So there came the name. And today I'm actually bringing this dream to fruition and shooting our first episode. Stories of Strength really is designed to inspire people that are one step away from making the best decision they've ever made in their life. It's one step away from taking the leap of faith. It's one step away from turning their life around, whatever you want to look at it. But it's created, and why I'm doing this is to inspire people. And how we're going to do that is I am bringing in amazing guests, like my friend here, who I'm going to
introduce as a guinea pig.
As a guinea pig. He's a little bit of a guinea pig, but he's a good friend, and he's somebody with a great story who actually naturally inspires people anyway. So what we're going to learn about today and what we're going to be talking about in future episodes are a point of adversity in my guests' lives. We're going to talk about the moment when they decided that they were going to be a survivor and what they're doing today that's successful. And then a lot of the people that I'll be interviewing are also doing things to help people that were in the situation that they used to be in, whatever that situation might be. So the reason that I brought my friend here, who I'm going to say his name right now, is the famous, wonderful, amazing, thoughtful, kind. I could say all of the amazing describing words, but you're going to speak for yourself today because you're going to share what makes Juan Grimaldo. So I will let you tell a little bit more, but I am not going to let this go without a good introduction. Juan is a top producing real estate agent. A lot of his success, however, comes from helping other people to be successful. That's a great concept. Givers gain, however you want to look at it. Your karma, you're doing things for the community. And Juan is the first person I thought of that I really wanted to have on this podcast because you inspired me actually to do this. That's where, like, we were sitting in my dining room, and we were just talking about things I want to do. And Juan can do anything because he believes he can do anything. But you believe you can.
I think, right? I think that's one of the well, thank you first of all for the opportunity to be here. I believe that if it goes through your mind, it goes through your life. And I come from very humble beginnings, and my father actually lived in an actual hut up in a mountain when he was a little kid. They were super poor, and so he was a man of strength. He was always positive. No matter what, he would say, let's just do it. Still, he wouldn't even think about it. So my mom, on the other hand, was a little more like I love my mom, was like a David Downer. No, you can't do that. It's not for you. It's
fear-based thinking, right?
Exactly. And again, same thing. She grew up very poor. She used to take off her sandals when they would go down to the village to get provisions for the family. She would take her shoes off because she didn't want them to wear out. That was the only pair of shoes she had. Right. So the
whole reason for the shoes, she takes them off, right?
But again, these were her only shoes, so she would, and I understood that later because when I was 17, I came to the States, and I used to go back and take her soap or cologne or perfume, and she wouldn't wear it. I'm like, Mom. She says, no, I might need it down the road. So they always had that scarcity mindset, and believe it or not, we also carry it, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I don't think I'm any special. I tell my team members, I have a team of agents and staff, and I said, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Not true, but very true that you are special. And the reason that
thank you.
I really admire you is that you do give of yourself. And you have been very happy to mentor me. So you're not just a friend, you've been a client, continue to be a client, but you're also a mentor. I absolutely 100% believe that through your mentorship, my husband and I have made some really incredible moves in our life that we would not have been able to do without your advice, without your coaching, without your just inspiring us to have, like, not be afraid to make a move. And so I really want to just thank you because you inspired me. So now
thank you.
I want you to tell a little bit more. I want you to tell a little bit more about where you came from. That's the number one thing I want to know about from you. Okay.
Well, I was born in California, in Santa Maria. My father was a farmer. And when I say a farmer, he didn't know a lot of farming. He actually worked. He worked for this Japanese guy that had a bunch of land, and my father was. They call them medieros because the Japanese owner would actually buy the fruit from my dad, but he owned the land. He said, "Hey, just get as much as land as you can, farm it, produce, and I'll buy the fruit from you." So it was a pretty good business. So when I was born, I was more blessed than my brothers because I'm the youngest of 8. My oldest brother is right now, he's about 67 years old. I'm 43. And they had it really rough. Growing up, my father was an immigrant worker or migrant worker. He used to come to the States, and he told me that he had to pick 2,000 kilos of cotton to get a permit to get across to work in the U.S.
Wow. So, talk about engineering your numbers to get somewhere, right? Like definitely. Reverse engineering. Imagine he's knowing he has to do 2,000 kilos? 2,000
kilos of cotton, something that weighs nothing. Just so imagine that.
2.4 pounds, right?
That's about 4,400 pounds.
Yeah.
To get a permit to come across, and he did it. I mean, when he told me that, I think that's where my work ethic comes from. I don't feel like I'll ever reach my dad's work ability because he was a freaking superhero. But if he had to work so hard to get there doing that, and I used to go to the fields when I was a little kid, and it was hard work. I remember my mom, she used to walk on her knees because it was super hard because you're bent over all day long picking strawberries, and you have to be fast because if you want to make money, you have to move fast.
Yeah.
So my father was, and my brother, my next brother, he worked with him, and I remember them making pretty decent money back then, and it was because of the hard work. So I was born in California. When I was 12 years old, I was actually recording a little. I'm doing a keynote, and I was thinking I was going back in time, and I was just reminiscing on when I was a little kid. I was 12 years old. My father says, "You know what? I'm retiring. I'm going to get my Social Security. We're about to leave," and he took me and my mom to work. We were picking raspberries. It was brutal work. The raspberries have a lot of thorns. I don't know if you've ever seen that. So it was brutal. I only did it for a couple of days, but for me, I'm like, man, how can he's done this his whole life. My father was 62 at the time. As soon as he was able to retire, he says, we're out. Right. So we go to Mexico when I was 12. Before that, I was coming back and forth with my mom because my father worked here seasonally. So he would come for 6 months and then spend 6 months in Mexico. So I went to school in Mexico. I went to school here. So, you know, what they say, if you do more than one thing, you're not successful at any one of them. And my English wasn't great. I was good in school in Mexico, but I just struggled with it. So we left when I was 12, continued going to school. And when I get to Mexico, they didn't accept my school year because I guess they didn't match whatever. So I had to repeat. So I went to a different school where I didn't have any friends. It was one of the worst schools. Every worst kid in town would end up there. Yeah. And I was there. So it wasn't a great year for me or my parents because I was hanging out with the wrong crowd. And I did it for about a year. And then my mom sent me to Nebraska. My brother was living up there at the time. And I saw it as an opportunity. Again, I was so little, but they sent me over there to keep the language, continue to speak English. So I went to school there for about a year. They had me in ESL classes because I wasn't, I couldn't speak English very well. And after a while, they told the teacher, why do you have me here? I mean, we're always speaking Spanish. How are we going to learn? And I said, just put me in regular class. They did it. Out of nowhere, I was able to speak English. So it was a good experience. I was there for a couple of years, went back to Mexico, went back to school. I did a couple of years of high school, and I was 17. Again, my father was getting Social Security. Luckily, he owned a home. So all he needed was, that was enough for him to have a good time.
Yeah. So
I says, I think I better leave and let them enjoy their later years. And I came to the States when I was 17. So,
wow. Yeah. Not even 18 yet.
No, I was kind of in a hurry to live life, and my mom was a little possessive, so I just wanted to get out of the house. So
that's a way to rebel. Go to another country.
Definitely. And it was a pretty, I guess, humbling experience. when you don't have anything, everything's normal. Like that's what we had. So I came to the States. I got a job. It was actually a pretty good job. I was making like $8 an hour, and I didn't have a car. So my buddies used to take me to work because we worked pretty close. So they dropped me off, picked me up. So I did that for about a year. And then I'm like, I think I can do something better than this. So I went and worked at a gym, and it was in sales.
Oh, that was your first taste of sales.
It was brutal.
Gym memberships?
Yes, it was bad. So I left that, and then I went back to the same company, started working. So the reason I came to the States was I skipped a little section where back home, my friends own little shoe shops. They make handcrafted sandals, huaraches. Mm-hmm. So I used to work with them, and my father used to get upset with me because they didn't pay me anything, and I was just going there because they gave me a few beers, right? So I would hang out with them, give me a few beers, and they were my buddies. So the buddy that I used to hang out with, he owned a shop, and he was really poor. The flooring was dirt. The roof was roof tiles, but again, they're not fancy over there. Underneath that, there's cardboard. Right. So when it rained, they had leaks all over the house, and their mattresses were pretty old, and everything was bad. So he had a really bad setup. And on top of that, I mean, they weren't making much. He was working every single day. So then this guy would come over, several people would come over and buy the shoes from him. And they used to come in these brand new trucks.
Oh, and they were reselling them, huh?
Mm-hmm. So those brand new trucks had these campers custom made. So I'm curious, what do you guys do? Oh, we go around the country and we sell them, we wholesale them, and that's awesome. So I kept looking at that, right? I'm like, this guy's here working his butt off every single day. These guys are pretty nicely dressed, have really nice cars. And I knew where they lived because it's a small city, so we knew everybody. And they had really nice homes too. So I got curious. And then after a while, my brother calls me. He's like, hey, I'm going to take a truck. Do you want to help me out? Again, I was 16 years old, around 16 years of age. So I said, yeah. He was in Nebraska. I came over, drove a 1967 old pickup truck.
You did like this. Did it have the gear shift in the...
Yep. So we drove it down to Mexico. He left it there. He came back, and I'm like, I got a car now. And I did. So the first thing I did is I told my buddies, hey, can you guys let me borrow some shoes? And whatever I sell, I'll pay you guys. And whatever I don't, bring back. Take whatever, because they're constantly making them, right? They have these little factories. So I left, came back. I went for a week, and my sister lives by the beach. So I went to the beach towns, and then I went to every little store and in the flea markets.
I'm like, I love this story.
And I started selling them, wholesaling them.
Of course.
And I came back and I made $200 that weekend.
Okay.
I'm like, man, this is good.
This was like in the 90s, right?
It was in 96.
So $200 is still
it was a lot of money.
Pretty good.
Even
and
right
in
now.
Mexico,
yeah,
that's still really, really good.
Definitely. So that was my first taste of real sales. And I said, I love this thing. So I told one of my buddies, why don't we go to the U.S. and export them? Here, two kids thinking about exporting shoes. So
I love it.
We came to the States. We started working in that company that I told you, and we made an order. We placed an order. But what we did first was we went to LA and Santa Ana. So we went to LA to the Mercadito, to La Placita Olvera, East LA, all the shops, the Mexican shops. Yeah. And then we went back to Santa Ana.
Alameda swap meet?
Yeah. We went to the swap meets too, yeah. So there's a lot of people that have these, you think little businesses, but they do very well. So we placed our first order and we made $5,000.
Wow. Where in Mexico were you bringing the shoes from?
Michoacan. They're a huge exporter even to the world.
So that's not a really close city.
It's 24, if you drive 24 hours south.
Yeah. So you were driving in Mexico in your gear shift truck. Mm-hmm. And you made $5,000 on the first trip? That
was actually, we imported them. Those we actually, let me tell you, that was a funny story too. So
I'm like, this is awesome.
So the first time we did it, we had no clue what we were doing. So I placed the order with my friends. Hey guys, I want you to make these many shoes, I'm getting orders. And I used to, just like I did in Mexico in my hometown, I used to hang I used to get a correa, which is a piece of leather, mm-hmm. and put all the huaraches, all the shoes, mm-hmm. and then I would hang them on my neck and be like, hey, I would sell my, and I knew how to make them, so it was an easy sell. So
this is really cool. I know what you're talking about too. Like you probably walked in the open air market and you had the shoes, you would talk to people and they would be like, oh, I like that one. And you would sell it right off of your
We used to sell dusters. No, I had boxes of, my truck was loaded of shoes. and I would sell dozens. So I was wholesaling.
So that's your display stand.
That was my display.
Oh.
And I know how to make these shoes, so they were handmade, quality, guaranteed.
Can you get a pair today?
Yeah.
Okay.
A couple of my buddies actually. Yeah, definitely. Sure, for sure. We're actually going on the 20th to Mexico.
Oh, good. I'll put it in order. No, I'm just kidding.
Definitely. So anyway, so the first time we placed an order, there's a company that brings the shoes all the way to the border, and we went and picked them up from that company. And my buddy, I didn't have a car. So my buddy, we took him over to Rosarito. We're going to go partying. We're going to go to Rosarito, Tijuana. But then our intent was to just have him load up. Yeah.
Love it already.
Yeah. So we're coming back, we're hungover and we're after partying and we get the shoes. We load up. It was actually a car. We load up the car and we're going across the border. And the immigration officer is like, "Do you have a permit for this?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" "Yeah, the shoes." No, you have to go to customs because they first of all have to say made in Mexico. So you have to stamp each one of them.
Hecho en Mexico.
Hecho en Mexico. And then after that, you have to pay taxes. You have to go to a broker. Oh my gosh. So we went back.
This just got really complicated.
Yep. So we had to do it. So we spent an extra day there. We went to a broker. Got in. The beautiful thing is we got a connection now. They could ship them. So that was a good thing that happened because we knew now how to do it.
Right.
So anyways, long story short, that was our first trip. We made it. We sold it. And we did a couple more. And then we realized that in LA, there was a bunch of a lot of them. So
there's a lot of competition.
Yes. So it was actually one guy. And I actually knew his family. Again, it's a small city, right? So this guy flooded the market.
So he came from Michoacan also. Mm-hmm. And he was like the guy in charge.
He came a little bit after us, but the guy was bringing truckloads of shoes.
How did he feel about that? You were...
He probably didn't even notice me because he was selling so many. And the problem with that was he brought the prices so low that it wasn't profitable. Oh. And the reason that happened is because he was selling all these shoes and he wasn't paying for them. So he ruined the market for us and we ended up,
Darn it. So the shoe business ended up not working out.
Yes. In Mexico, it's pretty cool because once you start getting into an industry, you see in Mexico, Brazil was kicking our butts because they have big factories. And then Guanajuato was just a big producer. But then again, we used to sell these are handmade. Those are factory made.
Right. And then yours might have a little specialty, like the coloring could be different or it has some imperfections because it's made by hand that you wouldn't see on like a factory made item, which makes it unique. That's pretty cool. Okay. So shoe selling was out of the picture.
It was out of the picture, but it taught me that being the middleman is what makes money. If you have the guy making the shoes has to pay employees, has to buy the material, and it's just there's so much overhead.
Yeah. And
then the guy that I'm selling it to at the store has to pay the rent, employees.
Yeah, let them have the overhead, right?
Exactly. So you're gonna basically have, and then you're gonna have leftovers, obviously, all the time. The shoe sizes or whatever. For me, it's I put it from here to here, and I make my money, and I'm out.
Yeah, I like the low risk. I get it. So you're the sales guy, which is great.
It was fun. I loved it. So anyways, I was there. Then I started doing all kinds of jobs. And I had a very low point because I had no car. So I worked at a grocery store and I worked at a carniceria. It was a Mexican grocery store.
You had plenty of food to eat then.
Oh, yeah. I used to buy the whole chickens and eat the whole chicken. Yeah, I was still growing. So 17, 18 years old, right? So, and one of my neighbors from back home in Mexico sees me and he's like, "What the hell are you doing here?" I said, "What do you mean? Get out of here. You're not supposed to be working here." I mean, "What do you mean? You're a citizen. You speak English. Don't do this." And he called me several bad words that I can't say here. But it was, for me, it's a wake-up call. Like,
the Spanish equivalent of four-letter words, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I got you.
Get that out of here. And but he meant good when he said that because he saw more in me than I did of myself. So that was a punch in the gut, which actually made me realize that, you know what, you're right.
That was an aha moment for sure.
It was it was a huge game changer. So I thank that guy for saying that. Even though at the moment I was probably confused, like, what is he talking about, right?
Did you feel a little angry with him?
No, actually, I felt kind of startled. I'm like, what just happened? But after a while, I'm like, you know what? I'm glad he did. Otherwise, I would have stayed there.
Yeah. Sometimes the moments that feel really uncomfortable, those are our growth moments, right? Or the moments where we're like you just said, you were kind of like, I don't want to say the word, but it is probably an accurate word. You were dumbfounded by what he had just said to you.
Yeah.
You're expecting, like, we're from the same place. Like, he's going to give me a hug and tell me, good job, mijo. And that's not what he said. He was like, he probably, was he in a position where he was not a citizen?
Yeah.
And he's like, why in the world are you doing this when you can go work anywhere? I can do this.
Yep.
Because
he
I
told me
don't
that.
have the ability to do that.
Exactly. And he basically said that. He's like, this job's for me, not for you. Get out of here. And this is the first time I see him after from, but maybe a couple months or a few months after since I was in Mexico. So I thank him for that. Sometimes I come across like that and I'm like, I mean it with love. Like, I don't tell you guys to do these things because I've been there. And when you were mentioning all these cool things about me, like I still have that imposter syndrome. Like, they're going to find out that I'm not great. So it's, I think
we all have the imposter syndrome. It's a symptom of also like your humility, because you still view yourself as Juan from Michoacan.
Yeah.
Like, that's who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're still Juan from Michoacan.
Yeah.
That has not changed. You just have learned more and had more experiences, and you've added to your repertoire, for lack of better words. But that doesn't mean that you're not still the same person you are, and that doesn't mean that being the same person that you were when you were born, not the same person, you grew, right? But you're always going to be you.
Of course.
But doesn't mean that you're an imposter either. And I think we all
it's just a syndrome.
go through that, right?
It's not real. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but anyways, yeah, that was the one of my Haas moment. Then I went and actually took a job at a temp agency, and at that temp agency, they sent me to a place to unload, which is, for me, it was kind of humiliating. They sent me to unload a truck with little rolls of carpet. Oh my gosh, it was going to be a lot of work. Yeah, so it was like 6 guys. We were doing that, and maybe after 20 minutes of being there, the manager comes up and says, "Who knows how to do inventory?" And I learned that at my previous job. I did shipping, receiving, and pretty much everything. I've always been curious.
I'm not unloading trucks. Yes. I know inventory.
So they took me and another guy, and the guy took us, and he says, "You're going to go this way, you're going to go that way." So I did my inventory, came back, says, here it is. He's like, "What, you're done already?" I said, "Yeah." "Do you want a job here?" "Of course."
So you got from attempt to hire.
Yes, and back then I was making $8 an hour, and then he's like, "I'll pay you $14 an hour." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm in. Where do I sign?"
That's a significant increase for sure.
Yep. So I did that for about a year. I'm gonna just cut the story short. Then went down to Mexico for a vacation. At this point, I had a really nice car. Things started to look better.
Yeah, I was falling into place.
So I went to Mexico, and my now wife and her sister call us and say, "Hey, do you guys want to hang out?" So it so happens that my wife is my sister-in-law's niece. So my brother's married to my mother-in-law's sister.
I understand.
So anyways, so we went out, and I always had a crush on her, but I never said anything because I was poor, she wasn't. And in Mexico, that's a big deal.
Yeah, that is a big deal.
A big deal. So
she was your luz for real.
She was my luz. She's my luz.
And she still is, yeah.
Yep. So we went out, and at that point, we were having a great conversation. I remember exactly what she was wearing. So I shared with her that, I always had a crush on her, and she says the same thing. And I'm like, "What? You never just..." I should have said something earlier, right? But
you're like, "Why didn't you tell me this before?"
Yes. And at that point, I used to say, "I'm never going to get married." I was having fun, and I was just doing stupid stuff all the time. So we had a great night, and we left to her grandpa's house. And as we get there, I says, "Do you want to be my girlfriend?" And she's like, "You're leaving the States." And I'm going, because she used to live, her family lives about 5 hours from where I'm in Michoacan. And I says, she's like, "Why? I mean, you're leaving and I'm leaving. There's no..." I said, "Just say yes or no." And I already had in my head, this is mine. She's not going to go anywhere. So
I love it.
Next day, we got really late to the grandpa's house. It was 10 p.m. So he was super upset.
Yeah.
So the next morning, I go with my buddies. In Mexico, you go to the steam room to relax and have some beers. They sell beer in the steam room. It's crazy.
So it can be less crudo.
Right. So we were having a good time. So I go back home. I'm walking into my house, and my mom says, "Hey, Luz Elena called that they're leaving." I said, "What?" So I call him, "What happened?" He's like, "Oh, my grandpa got upset. My mom doesn't want to deal with it. We're just going to go back home." All right. So I get there like in the movies. I'm running to get there. They're packing up their car, and I says, "So what did you think?" And she hands me a little glass with Winnie the Pooh that says "I love you" on it. Does that mean yes? She never said yes, but I assume it was a yes.
It says "I love you." It's a pretty good sign.
So, anyways, she left. I came to the States, and I was in California at the time, and I had a lot of bad influences there. So I told my wife, "I'm going to move to your tia's." She used to live in Nebraska, and so I moved to Nebraska.
Back to Nebraska.
Yeah.
Okay, this is an interesting travel you've been on, journey.
Yep. So I went to Nebraska. When I'm there, I get there and I apply for a job, and I got a job right away, a pretty good paying job too. Then we were talking on the phone for the next 2-3 months, and I proposed, "You want to marry me?" And she says, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, I'll come over in May, bring my parents, we do the right thing. We'll set it up, and we plan to get married in December." So we only went out one night, proposed, flew back to, or actually drove back, because back then it was
driving.
Cheaper.
Yeah.
So we drove to Mexico, and we set up the date and everything. We went out for another week, came back, December 2000 we get married.
So how many dates before the marriage?
Maybe 8, because one we went out, and then the week that I was there for.
And how many years have you now been married?
It's going to be 22 years, December 29th. Yeah.
That's a huge accomplishment. That's a big deal for people that got together younger, right?
I was 21, yeah.
Yeah, like you're pretty young. I don't think I was mature. I wasn't marriage material at 21 for sure. Wow. And so you got married. Did you go back to Nebraska with her?
So we went back to Nebraska. I was at that point a supervisor at the plant that I was working. We built cultivators, planters, and I was 21 years old, and after a while she's like, I imagined the U.S. a little bit different. It was a little bitty town.
She's imagining like a New York, right? Or an LA where there's like shopping, and you're in Nebraska.
And she comes from a big city in Mexico,
you're like,
too.
Here's corn and a football game.
That's
Enjoy it.
There's nothing else, just corns and cows everywhere.
Yeah. Midwest, typical Midwest. Yeah.
It was beautiful. I liked it. I had a lot of family there, so for us every weekend there was something going on.
Nice.
But I said, you know what? If you don't like it here, we don't have anything. Let's just go. And where do we go? Well, my buddy lives in Arizona, and he's saying that there's a lot of jobs. So let's go check it out.
I love it.
Yeah, so I come here to Arizona, and we got here. The last meal we had was a corn dog. We were super broke, like we had nothing. And one of my friends from Mexico actually owned a house, and he rented us a room. We used to sleep in a twin bed.
You were sharing the twin bed,
mm-hmm.
And you still liked each other?
Of course. That was the beautiful part. We were just newlyweds, 3 months, 4 months in.
You're like, it's okay.
Yeah.
We were young. It's
perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect.
We're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So so we actually lived there for a little bit, and then I was working as an electrician, which I hated. I did so many jobs, and I hated them all. And I was in my lowest point. We didn't have sometimes even enough money to eat. And my brother let me borrow every now and then. My compadre, which is my best friend, he lives in Mesa. He used to lend me $50. So I lent him $50, $100.
Wow, you were just kind of helping each other, like make it to the next paycheck.
The week, yeah. We weren't even a paycheck for more. We were behind a paycheck. So it took a while to get us, get our feet, get on our feet. And so little by little, we started getting better jobs. So in 2001, there was another economy downturn.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Mexico for a little bit. I was going to join the Navy, and I didn't. So we went to Mexico for a little bit. I opened up a taco shop for like 3 months.
Really?
My in-laws, they have a taco business in Mexico.
Oh,
they've had it for over 40-some years.
Why have you never shared this with me?
Yeah.
I expect tacos one of these days. Handmade.
Definitely. We make the best. And then the salsas, my wife makes amazing salsas. Anyways, I did it for 3 months, and after seeing how much I was making, I said, this is not working out. So I told my wife, let me go back. She was pregnant with Helen. Came back by myself, and I begged this guy to give me a job. One of my buddies was working at the dollar store, 99 cent only stores. Not a commercial, but anyways, they
we're not endorsing 99 cents.
Yeah.
They are good. They are good.
They actually were really good. I went and he gave me a job. I said, you know what? Honestly, I don't have any experience, but I have a family, and I need to support them. Give me a job. So I sold myself, right? So the guy gave me a job, and I became a supervisor there at one of the stores. And for 2 years, we worked there. That's where my 2 kids were born. They paid for everything. It was amazing. They were great people.
Wow.
Yeah. After that, yes. Then I worked at a rent-a-center because I'm always an entrepreneur, so I tried many things and it didn't work out. So I went back to work, and same thing. I was very negative. I had a very negative attitude for a long time. So I went to this place at an Albertsons of any other stores, and I was working for them as a clerk. And the manager was super positive all the time. I would ask him, "How are you doing?"
I was just going to ask you, how did you, because I don't see you that way.
That was my turning point. I would
ask him. A mentor.
Yes. And he wasn't even trying. Like, it was just seeing him.
Leading by example?
Exactly. So
I heard that was the best way to lead. Have you heard this before?
Of course. So I would ask him, how are you doing? It's terrific. What's wrong with this guy? It's weird how we say that about someone that's positive.
Right.
But when someone's negative, it's like, it is what it is, right?
We're so much more used to hearing the negative dialogue. Yeah. I mean, it's just constantly, we're so used to, even like in the news, even when you get, even with the most positive people, sometimes you get together and the first thing you talk about, it's like,
it's going bad.
I did it to you today. I'm like, everything's been really good. I just recently had a car accident. Like, and I consider myself to be a pretty positive person as well. But for some reason, we do share that part of ourselves with the people we're close to. And I think that you kind of gave me an aha moment right now of like, hey, let's start our conversations with positive experiences and kind of keep it on that, because then we stay in the mind frame of positivity, right?
Yep. There's a great book that's called The Big Leap. And it's funny because even our accidents, we cause them. It's insane. Like, why were you at that moment in that place? Again, is it real? I have no clue, but a lot of the stuff that they talk about in there, it's like...
Well, even if I don't know, I have to read the book, so I couldn't say yes or no that I don't believe it.
It's a good book to read.
The Leap.
The Big Leap.
The Big Leap. Yeah. Okay, so even if I haven't read the book, I do have the knowledge and understanding that we don't always understand the plan.
Exactly.
So sometimes things happen that we just in that moment we don't understand it.
Yeah.
But hindsight's 20/20 for those of you who don't know that yet.
Yeah. Yes. So where was I?
He was super positive.
He was very positive.
Were you at Rent-A-Center at this point?
No, I was at a...
Or you're back at Albert. You're at
I went to Albertsons because it was next door. I felt something coming and I knew, and things happened. So anyways, and then same thing with them. So he left, but he changed my life completely. And then another manager, I can't remember her name, but she was also super positive. She was my supervisor, and she would, hey, good morning, sunshine. Like, she would make me feel good. Everything was positive, and the whole store was just, bright. Everything was beautiful. But then I saw some changes, and I'm like, something's going to happen here. And sure thing, I left back to not a Rent-A-Center. It was a Rentway, similar business. And like a month later, they closed the store down. So yes, I moved right at the right time. So then I worked the Rentway, and then I was store assistant manager. And every morning I would go to the bank and make deposits for the business. And one time I knew the manager. He's like, "Hey, Juan, we're looking to hire people here. Do you know anybody that might be?" I said, "Me." I thought from Rent-A-Center to this would be a cool change, right? Really? Yeah, they're looking for bilingual people. I speak Spanish, bilingual. So I don't even have I had my GED, didn't graduate from high school. So that was always something that I had in my head that, I'm not worthy because I don't have a high school, diploma or whatever.
It's weird how we can kick our own butts.
Exactly.
Even harder than other people.
Well, you had to show, because people would come in with a degree and they would automatically go to the front of the line. And it used to change. It changed a lot. Yeah, I'm sure you can see that. Now it's who has the willingness to do things versus just because you know how doesn't mean you're going to do it, right?
Yes, that is very true.
Right. So anyways, I went there, got a job, and it was beautiful. They trained me for 3 months, and I fell in love with this. Like, I felt like I never belonged to those places, but when I went in here, I'm like, this is it. This is what I love. However, I had my 2 girls, my wife, and they were paying me so little. I was barely...
It was all commission, right? Probably, or a lot of it commission in this type of role?
It was commission. We had a base salary, but the commission was bad because then as they started thinking, how can we expand this business? They brought so many bankers that the pie just got really small. And I did it for about a year. And then from the bank, again, I thank you for, first of all, learning about the financial world. I actually got my investment licenses to sell life insurance. And
like 6 and 63?
6 and 63.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, I fell in love with it. And I learned how to do loans. and I did refis. We used to close the documents and everything. So I learned everything from the right way, from the ground up. But it wasn't paying the bills. So I went to open accounts at a construction company, and the girl that went with me, her husband worked there. And I says, what is this like? How much you make? He was making twice as much as I was making at the bank. And I said, how can I get a job here?
Like, I'm in the wrong place.
Yes. And I said, can you get me a job? He was like, yeah. I said, okay, what do I need to do? Get your commercial driver license and come in here. Okay.
So you go get your CDL.
Got my license. And then, I
don't know all this story. This is great.
There's a lot.
This is the first time I've ever heard like this part of the, like, I've known the overview of it. So I'm really enjoying this. I just have to let you know that.
Awesome.
This is a good story.
Thank you.
A very good story.
Appreciate that. So I go get the commercial driver license. I pass the test, and I'm like, okay, I need to get a truck, but where do I get a truck from? So my sister-in-law's husband works for Park and Sun, which is a garbage company here in Sun City, and they pick up I don't know if you've seen him. They run and pick up the garbage by hand, and they're running back and forth on the street. So I said, hey guys, I have a commercial driver license. I just need to pass the test, and I'll work for you guys. And they says, okay. They gave me a job, but I wasn't driving a truck. They had me picking up the garbage. Oh my gosh, that was a nightmare. That's really hard work, and you can imagine picking up the garbage in this heat. These streets are super long for. Anyways, so I did it. A month later, they said, you know what? Go ahead and take the test. You're good to go. Took the test, passed the test, and I'm like, I'm out. See you guys. Went to that construction company, got me a job, and I was there for a long time. So this is back in 2006. As soon as I left the bank, the guy who helped me buy my first home, I bought my first home in 2004. He says, Juan, I heard that you left the bank. Do you want to do loans? And I said, of course. What does that look like? I had no clue. I was getting $200 for a $200,000 deal or a refi or whatever. And he showed me how much I could make, and I'm like, I'm sold.
You're like, I was on the wrong side of the business there.
You don't know what you don't know, right?
Yep.
So this was 2006, 2007. I get my real estate license. I'm going to do both.
Yes.
And then 2008, the market crashes.
I remember 2008 very vividly.
Me too.
Very vividly. I was working at the Phoenix Chamber of Commerce at that time. So I remember there was a business, and I don't recall the business's name right now, but it had been in business for over 100 years in Arizona.
Right. And
they went out of business. They were not able to pull out of that time in 2008. So it was a really rough time for pretty much everybody. Yeah.
We were all in a bad. So 2004, bought my first house. I bought it for a good price. Then 2006, I feel like I got it all, figured out. Make that a rental with an adjustable mortgage. It gave me a second home with 8 and 10% rate. People that complain about the rates now have no clue. It was 8 and 10%.
What did it used to be in the 70s?
18%.
Yeah.
So 6-7% was a great rate.
Yeah.
Right. So anyways, I go and buy this other house, and I tell my broker, dude, I'm scared. He's like, you know what? Just do a deal a month. You'll be able to pay your mortgage. Okay. And then 2008 hits.
Wasn't that easy to get a deal a month in 2008, was it?
No, in 2008, there was nothing going on. Everybody started losing their homes. I learned how to do short sales, how to get properties for investors. I still kept my job in construction. And thanks to that job, I still have really, really good friends from there. Still, we're still friends. Yeah. And I worked there until 2009. And then I'm an entrepreneur, so I started a hot dog stand. That didn't go well. Yeah, I used to do events for dealerships. I used to go to the dealerships and sell hot dogs.
What? So I want a hot dog, a pair of shoes,
amazing. And
a homemade taco.
Yes.
What else?
I'll get you a loan too eventually.
Awesome.
Yes. So,
awesome.
Yeah, I tried that for a little bit. It didn't work out, so I went back to work. I called the company. They gave me a job again. But then again, I tried again. I was going to sell tamales. I said, okay, let's do this. And we did it. And then I figured it was a lot of work, and I'm like, this is not going to work out. So I couldn't go back to the company because they were laying off people. So I did a few. Actually, they opened up a new restaurant in Phoenix in Surprise. My wife and I were working there because at this point we have to just both pull because she never worked until then. And I says, you know what, I need your help.
Yeah.
Let's do it because they're paying me $10 an hour, $10 an hour.
Now we got 20.
Yeah. And that's how much I was making at my previous job. So
that was probably really hard too because she'd been a stay-at-home mom for some period at that point, right?
She's been a freaking, no matter what, she never gave up. And again, I was very negative. So she was the one that kind of straightened me out and said, dude, we're going to make it.
Narrow.
Yeah.
Good.
She was very positive. The first book we read together, when we just got married, she recommended me. That's why I recommend books all the time. It changed my life.
Yeah.
The book The Secret, right?
Yeah, I like that.
I remember putting $100,000 on a dollar bill, and anyways, that's one of the things we did together. But we bonded, and we're like, you know what, we're gonna make it. And she never. I don't think we ever had we had it rough in the sense that we couldn't buy nice stuff, but we always made it. Like we always had a roof on our table, and we were actually making decent money back then, like $70,000 a year, doing all my jobs that I did and pulling everything together.
Having 5 jobs and everything, but like the reality is that even if we don't really love it, we do have to do what we need to do in order to make the ends meet, right? Yeah. But not everybody sees it that way. Mm-mm. So that is one of the things that I really want to impress upon people when they are listening. You just sometimes have to walk a little bit blindly with the fact of knowing that you're doing the right thing and that you're doing hard work. You're doing all of these things to work towards something. Maybe in those moments you may not exactly understand what this is all going to do for you later on. But I can tell you in my own hindsight's 2020, right, is that, man, I remember of times feeling like I can't succeed. I won't make it. Having the imposter syndrome, all of that stuff. Or like, I'm not going to ever make enough money to buy a home or all of this stuff, right? But I just kept like pushing through because of mentors, because of good family, because of whatever things. You're like, you're doing the right stuff. You're doing the right stuff. And it eventually does come to fruition.
Definitely.
So there's somebody out here right now that has 5 jobs and a family to support, and they're going to hear this, and you're going to tell them what happened next.
Okay. Before we go further, I think the phone might die. I was just thinking about it, the battery.
Ooh.
Let me look at it real quick. You can clip this a little bit. Yep. It died.
It already died?
Yep.
That's okay.
You still have the podcast.
We'll just do this one a lot. Okay. We won't have video on this one, and I'll edit this one out. Okay,
so come 2009, I'm lost. Like I'm like, what am I going to do now? So I went and we worked at that restaurant, and I told my wife, this is not going to cut it. So I went and applied. I still had my CDL. I went and applied at a temp agency for CDL drivers, and they gave me a job. And this was driving a semi-truck. Already at this point, I had gotten my Class A driver license to drive big trucks, but I've never driven one before, so I was scared. And I said, I'm not going to do it. So I called my brother. I says, dude, I got a job hauling, I don't remember what it was. I think it was vegetables from here to Vegas. And I'm like, I don't want to kill myself because I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
So I said, can you teach me? Because he owned a truck. So, yeah. So I go over there, and this actually, my niece's husband, he had his truck available. And he wasn't using it. He's like, can you show me? So he showed me the ropes. We drove it a little bit. I felt comfortable. I said, you know what? I'm ready to go.
Did you go into any mountains?
What's that?
Did you go into the mountains?
Well, I had to because I didn't know what to...
We have to learn the downshifting and like all the stuff you got to do to make sure you don't lose your brakes. And there's...
Going uphill, you can burn the engine, right? Yeah. So I learned how to do that. And as I was there, my brother's like, you know what? They're hiring at the company that I'm at. He was hauling crude oil. And he says, do you want to apply? I said, yeah, right now I'll do anything. So I went in, applied, and the guy said, yeah, when can you start? I said, well, let me just tell my wife that I'm going to be working here. So I called her. I said, you know what? They're giving me a job, and it's pretty good pay. At that point, I think it was like $5,000 to $7,000 a month. So I came back. I had a Geo Metro. Have you seen the movie Fun with Dick and Jane? Have you?
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
I'm just laughing because, yes, I have.
That was it. So we had a little Geo. I had a Geo Metro without AC. It didn't have the fabric on the top. So the sponge was falling apart, so I had to wear safety glasses so the sponge wouldn't come into my eyes, the particles. So because I have
a hat, so it doesn't go in your hair, right? Like.
Yeah. So I came back. I said, you know what? I'm gonna just load up clothes so that I can work, and then I'll come back to you as often as I can.
Oh wow.
So we did that for 6 months, and I kept calling my previous employer, hey, anything going? And I would call all the supervisors, because when you drive the water truck, you pretty much serve as the whole area of everybody, because we used to do big government jobs, and these jobs were huge. And so I was with the carpenters, with the electricians, with everybody. They would need water, and I would just supply it.
Right.
So finally, after 6 months, they actually called me and say, Juan, we have a position open. Can you make it? I said, yes. When can you be here? You tell me, I'll leave right now. So
Yeah.
he says, you can start on Monday. This was like on Wednesday. And it so happens, God is great. I believe that he lined everything up. My wife was going to go with the girls so we can go to Disneyland. So I'm getting emotional. They get there and we go to Disney and I say, I'm ready. So came back and they gave me the job. And then after a few months, they say, you have to go to Tucson because there's no more work here with the same company. I said, okay. We had to do what we had to do. So they moved me to Tucson, and for 6 months, I'm staying there with a friend who owned a little trailer. I was coming back every day with a crazy dude that would drive because he wanted to see his mom every night. He lived in Phoenix. So Luz used to take me to Phoenix at 2 a.m, drop me off so that we can leave at 2 a.m, 2:15, be in Tucson by 4:15, 4:30, and then work the whole shift. Get back at 7. Luz would pick me up, go back, eat, sleep, and then go back and do it for 6 months.
Whoa. That's crazy. I'm sure that was like pretty, like, that was probably like a challenging time for you, I would assume.
Again, it was what we had.
Doing it.
And my wife, she never complained. She would get the girls, put them in the car at 2 a.m, because, we're Mexican. We're not going to leave them by themselves. So
ever. Never, ever.
No. So we did it for a little bit, and then I got tired of it, and Luz was actually helping me. She went to work at this point we were doing well, but she wanted to work at the school so she can be with the girls and see what they were doing. So she was at a charter school working in the cafeteria, and I would call her manager. Do you have any work? Now we're opening up another school, and we're going to need a supervisor there. And I said, okay, I can do that.
Well, you wanted to go work at the schools?
I just wanted to come back home because I was in Tucson.
Gotcha. Okay,
So
you were looking for alternate work so you don't have to do this commute anymore. I gotcha.
Exactly. Okay. So I called him until he says, okay, come on over. I got him tired. I'm in sales, right? Always. So
don't ever stop.
He gave me a job at $10 an hour. Pretty soon I realized that wasn't enough, right?
So back to the $10 an hour again.
Yes.
You went through this a few times.
Well, I was a realtor, and I still do a deal here and there, right? Yeah. But I always wanted to do this 100%. I wanted to be a real estate agent full time. Yeah. I just hadn't figured out yet, especially being in the middle of the crisis, right?
Like where do you fit in? Get in where you fit in, and you weren't sure where you were going to get in and fit in, right?
Exactly. I always wanted that. So, and I quit used the hot dogs, the tamales, and now the third time, I was at Century 21, and I tell my manager, man, I've been wanting to do this for forever, full time, and I'm gonna just quit the job and just try it. This was 2011, and I was scared. Property were selling for $30,000, $50,000. I was doing mostly rentals, right?
I remember.
So I quit my job, and I got scared. And the manager's like, Juan, you've done it before. Don't do it. Just stick with it.
I've heard this, Einstein talks about the hundreds and hundreds of experiments he did, or even Thomas Edison, for that matter. These famous people, inventors, talk about all the time. We only hear that like the one thing that they did that worked, but they had to do like 1,000 things in order to get to that one thing that became a famous invention or a famous theory. All of that stuff. So just remember, there's a lot going on that we don't know about, but there are people out here that want to support you. Right now, I don't have a dedicated Facebook to this podcast, but if you want to follow me and some of my guests, please come to my Facebook. It's under Heather Darren. I do have an Instagram that's also Heather Darren. And thank you for listening today, and can't wait for you to reach out. I want to hear your stories. If you have a story that you want to share, definitely throw it my way, and we'll set up a time for you to come and be a guest as well. I hope everybody has a great day. Make sure that when you do see my podcast live, like it, comment, share. It's the only way that I can grow, and it's the only way we can share our message with more people so that they can grow as well. Have a great day, guys.
My words come from my soul. Control of one's own path is a destiny that a man must choose.